Hey everybody, welcome to the Entrepreneur Experiment podcast with me, Gary Fox. On the Entrepreneur Experiment, you learn the secrets and systems world-class founders use to master their business, their body, and their brain. Today, I was so excited about this podcast, I'll be completely honest with you. Tony Richardson is living every, I would say boy, but in reality, every boy, man, dream. He's bought his own football club. This is an incredible story. He's an incredibly successful entrepreneur, having started and floated 2 companies on the stock exchange. He's now pursuing his passion in sport, having bought and merged Cabinteely and Bray Wanderers. And we see his vision for the future of sport and the future of these 2 clubs. It's an incredible chat if you're a sports fan, but even from an entrepreneurial perspective, there are so many lessons to be learned from Tony's story. Here is my chat with Tony Richardson. But first, quick thank you to my partners. Thanks to my partner, Square. Everything your business needs, like payments, point of sale, e-commerce, inventory management, chatting endlessly about the weather? Well, you're on your own there. Square. Everything your business needs. Almost. Visit square.com. If you're a regular listener of the pod, which I hope you are, you'll know I've been hosting the podcast from iconic offices for quite a while now, and things have gone really, really well. So well, in fact, that I'm now a member of iconic offices, working and recording from one of their spaces. This means I can vouch for the benefits it gives to any business. On that note, iconic offices have given me a number of exclusive complimentary day office trials for my audience. So try it out for yourself for the day, bring your team, no catches. Simply go to the web link in the description and enter Gary23, so it's Gary23, to claim your complimentary office for a whole day. It's a pretty fantastic offer. Thank you, Iconic Offices. One of the most frequent questions I get asked on this podcast is, where do I find a mentor? And I've never fully had the answer, but now I do. Introducing Mentors Work, a fully funded mentoring program designed to help your business thrive, brought to you by the Small Firms Association in partnership with SkillNet Ireland. Imagine having a series of one-to-one individual mentoring sessions, along with upskilling workshops to network with your peers and learn from experts, as well as a bespoke business plan. And the best part, it's at no cost to you. Join over 2,000 Irish SMEs and see how the award-winning Mentors Work program can help your business to thrive. Places are limited though, so apply today at mentorswork.ie. Program is fully funded until the end of 2023, so get your application in now. Tony.
Hello.
Welcome to the pod.
Thank you. Yeah, happy to be here.
I was excited with this one, I won't lie.
Right.
You're living definitely my dream, and
right.
Most young boys, and if we're honest, all men's dream.
Okay.
What do you do?
I won't shatter it for you.
What? No, don't tell me anything horrible. What do you do?
Yeah. These days,
yes. We'll start there and we'll work back.
Okay. These days, I run a football club, League of Ireland First Division football club, Bray Wanderers. Have been doing that for 18 months, give or take. Putting more time into it than I had probably originally planned, but I have to say, enjoying it. The sports space is interesting. Right now, kind of new to me.
Fascinating.
Well, I'd be a sports fan and a sports player.
Okay.
But, the business of sport is certainly new to me. So interesting.
We have a lot to dig into.
Yeah.
How does one come to own a football club?
Probably. Not something you'd plan particularly. So, my journey to getting involved with the football club was a little bit circuitous. So, I've played football. I come from a football family. I still play with a group of old timers. They mightn't like me calling them that, but there's a gang of us get together on a Friday night and have a kickabout, a couple of beers afterwards, and an hour of post-match analysis. And
key.
So, but I would have been involved with kind of football clubs, right throughout growing up. When my own kids were growing up, I would have coached teams and so on. So I've always been in and around football in the kind of, the Dún Laoghaire, Rathdown, Borough kind of area with different clubs. Played schoolboy football for Joey's, then got involved with Cabinteely, which is a big club, about 1,000 kids in it now.
Wow.
And, I'm chairman of Cabinteely Football Club. Some really great work going on there. And would have played a bit of Leinster Senior League, and then as you get older, it's five-a-side and beer. But so I've kind of been in and around football, and got involved. Where are we now? What, 18 to 24 months ago, with Cabinteely Football Club. Cabinteely had two parts to it. One was is a junior club for kids, and the other was a League of Ireland club. So kind of junior football kind of changed fairly dramatically about 6 years ago or so. So in terms of league structures. So back in the day, kind of the DDSL, or the Dublin District Schoolboys League, would have been kind of the premier place to go if you were a talented, aspiring young boy or girl. It still is a great league, but structures changed a number of years ago with the introduction of National League football for underage kids.
Okay.
So there's now national football for 14s, 15s, 17s and 19s. So these kids travel to Donegal, Kerry, Galway, Cork, and so on. So that's where you're, if you want to call them, elite, developing. That's where that talent goes now.
Okay.
And so someone in Cabinteely had the foresight about 6 years ago or so, given that's where football was heading, to apply for a League of Ireland licence. So Cabinteely entered the League of Ireland as a first division club. Back then, and was active in the league, but small club. I think probably would have struggled over the years to attract significant sponsorship and kind of get the revenue side of things going. But did a really great job and developed some great talent. And so one of my mates just said to me one night, "Listen, he's involved with the club, and they're looking for some additional support." Either a sponsorship or someone to bring some investment into the club. And so I said I'd have a look at it. I had just finished up in a business, and certainly had a bit of time on my hands. So pulled a couple of guys together, and we got involved with just the League of Ireland side of Cabinteely.
Okay.
As owners, effectively. So
what were you thinking when you're like, this would be a bit of crack, or, what were you thinking?
I mean, I'm a football man, so I love my football, and you should probably never marry the two in terms of passion for sport and investment in sport. So lots of folks will tell you that's possibly a recipe for disaster. And but I have to say, we got involved in what I would regard as a fairly manageable way in terms of managing our exposure, with the kind of clear potential for us to get our money back and potentially get a bit of upside if a certain player or two or three happen to get on a successful journey. And so we kind of assessed the situation and thought this would be a bit of fun. The vibe around the league generally seems to be heading in one direction, and that's up and improving. A lot of positivity about the place, a real energy about it. Crowds are up, and there's, I think, now good work happening in the FAI and so on. So the whole general environment, I have to say, just struck me as interesting and positive. And as long as we manage our exposure, this could be quite exciting to get involved with,
So you came at this as a football man, absolutely, but also as a businessman. Some of the stuff you're saying there, manage your exposure, the upside, clearly business hat on here, married with the passion. Which is kind of the ideal mix. When you say manage your exposure, what do you mean?
Well, I mean, I think, when I got involved on the basis of, a set of numbers that you can see and assess and so on, but also a group of folks who are already involved with the club. So if you don't make a connection with them and you don't build a level of trust and a good working relationship pretty quickly, then I wouldn't advise someone to do this. So I don't get involved in the football side of things at all. So there's a head of football in the club, super guy, has been around League of Ireland for a good number of years, knows everybody knows him, and so he looks after the football side of things, and I just said I'd get involved and I look after the business side of things. So we put in place a general manager who looks after logistics, operations, all that kind of stuff, and I said I'd focus on the business side of things, mapping out a vision in terms of where we think we could go with the club, and what that journey might look like in terms of investment required, and also what are the time horizons. Is this a 3-year, 5-year, 10-year thing, or what? So we've had a good team together pretty much from the get go.
Okay.
And really was involved with Cabinteely just for a couple of months, and then had a conversation with the guy who had a majority position out in Bray Wanderers, and he said he was getting out, and would we be interested in combining forces and trying to develop a bigger, better resourced club for the area, given that we were only about kind of 5 miles apart in terms of location and so on. So
they were both in League One at the time.
Both in the first division. Yeah. And so we kind of had a look at that proposition and decided it was worth pursuing, and interestingly put the two clubs together, which was an interesting exercise.
I'd say that was pretty easy, was it?
Yeah. Some people very supportive, some people not supportive at all, as you can imagine. So
people hate change.
Yeah.
They
and
hate change.
It's sport. People are passionate about it, and there's
the identity, and
exactly.
I've been here all my life,
Exactly.
and
yeah. So that was interesting.
It's a great word.
Let's just leave it at interesting. Yeah, and then we kind of started off on what's probably a bigger journey than I had originally thought we were getting into. So yeah, that's how it all kind of happened. It was a chat after a game of football on a Friday night with some guy, and then
here we are.
And here we are. Yeah.
I love that though. It's nearly always the way. People have these grand visions, and you always assume it's like some sort of secret.
Yeah.
Oh, he must be in the inside. Yeah, he is in the inside of the five-a-side game. It's always it's always the networks you have and the people you meet and the friends you meet, and it's fascinating. Step me way back before this, because this is your first foray into sports. What were you doing before this?
So prior to that, I've worked for kind of 30 years or so in life sciences. So two different businesses. One was a product business, a medical device type of business that would have been involved in research and development. Pretty much constant capital raising to fund the next piece of research and so on. And that business had about a 10-year life from the mid-90s. We sold the company in 2008.
Good timing.
It was about 2 weeks before Lehman's collapsed.
Wow.
And that was kind of a scary time.
But
timing was good. I wouldn't claim total credit for the timing. These things kind of happen for different reasons. So that was interesting. I mean, I don't have a background in science. My background is in finance. When I qualified as an accountant, I actually had a practice for a few years out in Dunleary, and then just got into a business with an old childhood friend from the area. So
there's that network kicking in again.
Yeah, he was starting a business, wanted someone to help on the finance side, and I said, yeah, I'm happy to get involved. Initially just providing services, and then eventually it kind of morphed into a full-time thing. So we had an interesting journey with that business. And after we sold it, I started another business, which was I describe it as being on the service side of things as opposed to product. So, but basically project managing drug development trials, clinical trials for pharma companies and biotechnology companies. Yeah.
When you sold the first business, where was your head at in terms of how did that feel? Was that, you're like, okay, I'm done, I'm going to go off and do something else? Or what was your head at that stage?
Yeah, I mean, I had no particular plan. When we sold the business, I had agreed to stay with it for a while. I mean, I'd largely always worked for myself, so it was interesting to sell a business to another company, and then you end up having to slot into a management group and reporting to somebody else.
Because you're out, but you're not really out. That's why I always ask this question. I'm fascinated how founders cope with that transition, because there's nearly people always describe it as having like nearly two exits. You have the day you sell, but then you're going back in, and I always ask, what's it like? And they're like, nothing. So I was back in there on Monday. And I was there for 2 years.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the difference, I suppose, is that you have a weight, I suppose, lifted from your shoulders in terms of the responsibility and risk you carry when you are leading a business. You know, now you're part of a team. You know, someone else is the CEO, and all that goes with that. So I mean, I'm kind of easy to get on with, and I'd slot into a team fairly easily. So, you know.
How did you find it though, going from founder to not founder?
I mean, I found it was an okay period for me, I have to say. There was a lot of travel back and forth to the US for management meetings and that type of thing. But it was okay, you know. It was fine, and also kind of gave a little bit of time to think about, you know, what you want to do next. I'd say, you know, sold the first business, made a few bob, but, you know, certainly didn't make, you know, a sufficient amount to just decide, okay, I'm going to go and play golf now for the next whatever.
Going to go buy a football club,
or buy a football club. So, but, you know, made an amount of money I was happy with at that point, and at the age I was at. And
were you always going to go again? Did you have that bug in you?
Well, yeah. So, I mean, I think... Yeah, I mean, I would always have, and I'd be involved with different businesses here and there, and always looking at different opportunities and so on. And
it's just in you, isn't it? It's just there.
Yeah, I think so.
Like curiosity.
Yeah. And I think looked at the service space. I mean, developing kind of a regulated product, and going through the whole product trialing and approval pathway and all that. Is challenging, and there's lots of risk associated with it. So, like lots of healthcare products, you know, you'll be aware, don't make it at the other end. So failure rates are high, and so on. So I kind of looked at the service space, thinking, oh, that could be easy.
Famous last words.
Just so far from the truth.
You always think what the other person's doing is easier, don't you?
Yeah. And you look at it and you kind of say, I mean, like, how hard can that be? You know, it's project management, it's hourly rates, it's, you know...
Start, middle, end, I see it, yeah.
So there's nothing easy out there. That's kind of pretty clear, you know. So started a business with, you know, it's still in healthcare, but with quite a different focus. And also the building of the business was quite different. So
did you approach it differently?
Well, did I approach it differently? In some respects I did. In terms of how we financed it, I didn't. So I actually used the public market to finance both businesses. So raised a bit of seed capital from, you know, angels or high net worth individuals in the initial years of the business, and then listed both businesses on the stock market in London, and then would have used the market to fund and grow the businesses from there. Okay, you know?
That's a pretty uncommon route for Irish companies.
Yeah, and learned lots of lessons along the way.
Why did you go down that path?
It's interesting. Certainly with the first business, you know, you start out kind of accumulating private investors. And back in the mid-90s, you know, you could raise a few bob here and there. You could raise a few bob in the pub on a Friday night. You could raise, you know, there depending on your network.
I have to start hanging out with your friends.
No, I don't know.
I'm going to come out on a Friday and hang out in your group.
But there was a point in time where there was just a lot of that kind of money around. But interestingly, if you start your business and you take in that kind of money, it can close off other options to you. Other avenues to you.
In what way?
Well, typically, venture capital won't get involved with an early stage company that has too many moving parts, too many investors, a complicated share register, all that kind of stuff.
Just too messy for them. They want to clear.
Just too messy. Now in some cases you can do a cleanup, or they can take people out or whatever. But the first business, we had probably accumulated far too many of these types of investors.
Because you would keep having to raise, is it?
Keep having to raise, and the partner in the business, he was off courting investors constantly, and so gosh, I mean, when we listed the company, I think we must have had the guts of 500.
What?
Yeah. What we would call retail.
Yeah. Okay.
Investors.
Wow. There's a lot of memos to be sending out.
Well, that presents its own challenges in terms of there's a group there that is very difficult to coordinate, and
you're herding cats.
To manage and so on. So now I have to say, they were a supportive group, and lots of people within that group would have followed their money and backed the business all the way.
Okay.
So the guy who founded the kind of the business originally, or had the original business idea, I think probably had always had an IPO in mind, and really? That we'll accumulate all these investors, and then somehow we'll give them there'll be an exit opportunity in terms of a listing somewhere.
Okay, so that was his liquidity event, was going to be, right, we're going to list this, and then people get their money back.
I can tell you, a listing on a micro cap market, if your market cap is less than 50 million, isn't a liquidity event. So it's just the beginning of the next phase of the journey, really. So that's a whole kind of interesting story. And interestingly, when you list with the share register that big, that is largely retail based or individuals, it also makes it difficult to then attract what you'd call institutional investors.
Right.
So that was kind of a bit of an ongoing, challenge to try and kind of restructure the share register, I suppose, and have it more institutional focused. But really interesting journey.
Very rare. You're definitely the first person who's listed two companies as their way of raising cash. Yeah. Was it different than the second time round? Was it you just kept it cleaner?
Round, it certainly had a smaller share register. Share register was tighter. Listed really because and there's probably not a lot of point in listing unless you've got a capital hungry business. So unless you've got a purpose for raising a good purpose for raising money, there's probably little point in doing a kind of a small cap listing. But we wanted to build our business through acquisitions, and had identified an opportunity to buy some small businesses around Europe, and felt that the listing would give us access to capital. We could use a little bit of our stock as currency in terms of some transaction consideration, and so we probably were a bit more successful in terms of getting institutional investors interested.
This was post-crash. This is probably 2012, 13, was it?
So started the business in 2010.
Okay.
Yeah, and sold it in 2019. So we did 8 kind of acquisitions and integrations. And built a business. It was still a small business. I don't know, we had 180 personnel dotted around mainly Western Europe, providing a range of clinical trial services to pharma companies. And,
so you sold I'm just writing in my head here. You sold in 2008, just before the crash, and you sold in 2019, just before COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah, you might just give me a heads up next time you're just thinking about selling anything.
Okay. Yeah.
That's what was it? Napoleon was like, I'd always prefer a lucky general.
Yeah. So that was that business journey, and learned lots along the way there as well. So putting a board together. I mean, these are small public companies, so your board and governance and all that is a critical aspect of it.
How did the second sale come about? Was that something you were working towards, or was that something that kind of just occurred?
I'd say it was probably opportunistic-ish. So I was involved in the EY Entrepreneur of the Year program, and bumped into a guy who I knew on that. He had some ideas around in the life sciences space, and had set up a business focused pretty much on kind of rare diseases or orphan diseases, as we would call them, and just had a chat. He said, where are we heading with our business? And I said, we're always open to conversations. And so we sat down, had a chat, and we decided we'd put the businesses together, and put some new capital and some new funding into it, and so on, and we kind of agreed at that point in time, or agreed a little while after, that I would take a different role, remain available to kind of take client calls and do certain things, and just kind of for a transition period, and then then got out. That business is still listed, so interesting, a pretty unorthodox journey, probably with both businesses, I would say.
And now you've taken a hard swing right into the sports business. So you're continuing that theme of unorthodox businesses.
This is totally different. This is totally different. So, but that's the journey so far. So
what has it been like figuring out the sports business? Because it seems immensely fascinating, but also incredibly complex to come into it as an outsider.
Well, I suppose as a business type, if you compare it with kind of medical device development or drug development, the sports business is a lot more straightforward. So in terms of understanding what needs to be done and how you might get from A to B, and it probably doesn't have any of the binary risks that drug development has, or any of that. So in one sense, it's simpler, but the number of moving parts is really interesting, and number of small moving parts. Now these are all moving parts that have the potential to become much bigger, but at the moment they're kind of relatively small. So you look at, for example, the multiple income streams that you'd have around a club, from shop, kit sales, lotto, car park, concerts, events, Christmas market.
It's endless, really, when you start listening.
Gate receipts, TV money. There's 10, 12, potential income streams there, each of which kind of require their own skill set, I'm sure, to kind of to progress them. We talk about spinning plates a lot, and there's a lot of them. But certainly from a kind of from a high level view, it's a simpler business. So there's just a lot.
So you got involved in Kamatili. Literally a couple of months later, the merger with Bray happened. Yeah. What was your vision? What were you like going, oh, you know what, this is what we're going to do?
Yeah.
I see kind of the picture, because you strike me as a very strategic guy who thinks things through and has a vision for where he's going. So what is the vision?
Yeah. Well, I think the opportunity is very clear. What's less clear, I suppose, is the time horizons involved. So
what's the opportunity?
So the opportunity is the asset that we have, which is a fantastic ground in the middle of town. There aren't many of these in existence anymore. A club with great heritage, but the opportunity is the potential. So if you look at where we're positioned, one big piece of the opportunity is the catchment that we have to target. So we're out in Bray. Bray has a population of 25,000 to 30,000. You've got everywhere around it, pretty much growing fairly rapidly.
Extremely, yeah.
Greystones, for example. You've got the likes of Cherrywood coming on stream. Rumor has it there's potentially 20 to 25,000 folks living up there.
Easily. I was driving past it today, and each day I drive past it, you can see the towers getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Yeah. You're kind of going, that's a whole new city quarter, essentially. It's a whole new town.
Yeah.
Like, it's Greenfield side, which is pretty rare in Dublin.
Yeah.
And it's the Lewis is there, the motorway is there.
You've got the borough of Dunleary, which would be my old stomping ground. Well, I still live there. And then you've got North Wicklow, so you've got Gorey, you've got Arklow. So if you look at where other clubs are located, and you just stick all the pins on a map, you'll kind of see pretty quickly the size of the opportunity that we have. City centre, you could argue, is a little crowded. UCD obviously is in South County Dublin, but UCD is.
It's a different beast.
It's a different type of club, but they might argue it's not. But so we're kind of looking at that and the potential of that, and then we're looking at, I suppose, the general atmosphere around the league and around League of Ireland football generally, which I think right now is really positive, and is only heading in one direction. So. Hard to pinpoint why, but post-COVID, people have come out of the woodwork. Attendances at games are all up. Certainly in the Premier Division. First few games of the season all sold out. Level of interest is definitely there. And why is that? Maybe some of it's to do with COVID. People want to get out. Friday night under the lights out in Bray is a great buzz. It's a great experience. But I think the product in terms of the football and the quality of football has really improved. The football's good,
Why is it getting better? Because it definitely is. And I was going to ask you what is changing, and there's loads of things changing. Yeah. So why is the football suddenly getting better?
Yeah, I think, there's been years of investment kind of gone in at grassroots level, and there's a huge amount of work still to do there, but I think we're starting to see shoots there. So we've now, I mentioned earlier, this whole change of structure from local county-based football to national football. So our academy has 80 elite players in it, with proper coaching structures, proper strength and conditioning, diet. Facilities that we're working on improving, like every other club, but it's a step up, certainly from when I was playing football. So it's all becoming much more professionalised. There's no question about that. And then kids see the likes of Evan Ferguson getting away. They look at Jason Knight. They look at Andy Moran. They look at. There's examples there. Now, there have always been examples.
Yeah, I know, but you need to see it, though. Yeah. And I think you need to see it come through the League of Ireland, because if someone leaves at 12, they don't see it, because they're in an academy in the UK. Yeah. Their link to Ireland is gone until if they make the international squad. Whereas if people come to the League of Ireland and people are in Bray every Friday going, that's our boy, that's our guy, now he's gone to Brighton or he's gone to an Arsenal. That connection is so deep, and I think we've been missing that for a long time.
Interestingly, Brexit and kind of a quirk of Brexit, I would say, has contributed in some way to improving standards. So boys or girls can't go and sign a professional contract in the UK until they're 18, until their 18th birthday.
Okay.
So back in the day, you would have had kids going on the boat, at 14, 15, 16, and so on. Now, interestingly, some of them are going to European clubs now, which I think is an interesting development.
I was going to ask you about this, because I was reading about this recently, about clubs in Germany and Spain looking at Irish talent now.
Yeah, so I think that's really healthy, and I'd love to see more of it, because it brings different perspectives back into our game. alliances with overseas clubs, and we're working on some ourselves. We have one with the club in Madrid. It allows for coach exchange, player exchange, just exchange of ideas, all that. It's interesting to spend a bit of time. We were down in Madrid there last year, spent the weekend working with, interacting with, having dinner and a few beers with a lot of coaches, a lot of whom were kind of ex-pros from La Liga. And
I say that is fascinating.
Yeah, just the exchange of views and,
the heritage there.
Their philosophy. Yeah. So that's really interesting, and I'd love to see more of that.
Can we do that here? Can we install that philosophy and that ethos here?
Well, I think so. I mean, I think what we're breeding right now is a multi-skilled, versatile, talented, bunch of players. It's interesting. We hosted a couple of games under 15 internationals out in Bray there just recently. The Irish under 15s against Wales, and so the Irish lads won both games. They're just kind of chatting amongst the coaching staff and all afterwards. They were just observing the difference in physicality and speed and so on of the Irish kids. Kind of jokingly about whatever we're feeding them, and but it was clear, but it wasn't just physical. The skill was there also. So I think there's a really exciting crop of players kind of in the pipe. But certainly we have in our academy, and
these players have all grown up watching extremely high quality players on TV. I think that can't be overlooked either in terms of the access to games.
Yeah,
you can now watch La Liga. I remember I was joking with my wife. I was like, I will never not get a buzz about being able to turn on the TV and watch any game in the world at any time. That still to me is a giant novelty. I remember that it was match of the day.
Yep.
That's the only thing you'd see. You'd rarely see a game, and then maybe on Channel 4 on a Sunday there used to be the highlights.
There was Italian football back in the day. James Richardson.
Exactly. Goal Italia. I was obsessed. That was the highlight of my weekend. Match of the day on Saturday night. And then you'd see nothing. Maybe on Eurosport, when you had the dodgy box, there might be some random Spanish or a French first division thing, and you'd be glued to it. Whereas these players are now growing up watching the best players in the world, but also how they play. Not just the great skill, it's the systems.
I think that's an interesting point. So, if I go back to my father's day and then my day, and now, when I played, we used to have a thing called a sweeper. And and I played sweeper, and
now it's the goalie.
And exactly. So the approach to the game now is really quite different. You can see how fast it is, how physical it is. But just look, there's plenty of goals going in. Now you're looking at 3-3, 4-3, 4-all. The prospect of a high scoring game is no longer.
The skill level's gone up.
Yeah. So the product is really exciting. You remember the days of the old Italian football. It'd be a 1-0 here or a 1-0 there.
Yeah. Highly tactical,
lots of
highly cynical.
Balls across the park, lots of back, lots of, and you go one up, you close up shop, and it's kind of game over. That's,
the waves of football are fascinating. Spain really broke the model in a good way when they went on that run from 2008 up until about 2014. Just couldn't be touched. Tiki-taka football. Just couldn't be touched. And now that's everywhere. It's just predominant. Now it's changing again. They're playing with 3 forwards. Football's fascinating. You think it's the same game.
It is,
11 players. Oh, how different can it be? You're going, it's so beautiful.
Managers that have fairly well transformed the game. And that trickles down, So that's what happens. People copy others, and and then the next new iteration comes along,
but you have to see it. I was at an MMA event. My friend put on an MMA event up in Oma just before Christmas, and the talent, good God, it was unbelievable. I've gone to a lot of MMA events. All of them are absolute. Over the years, have been pretty poor. This was the highest, and this is all amateur. And I was chatting to the coaches after. I've told the story in here before because I think it's so powerful. I was like, what is going on? These 17, 18-year-old absolute killers. They're like, love them or loathe them, it's the McGregor effect. He came on the scene. These guys have now been training for 10 years. He's like, they started when they're 7, 6. They've grown up training every day.
Yeah, yeah.
Phenomenal. Like, and it's the same with football. You have to see it.
You have to see it. Yeah, I mean, and because football is enjoying such a golden period right now, you know, that there are other aspects kind of creeping into it now that are, you know, possibly not that helpful. You know, so like there's a proliferation of agents. So you've got kids now 14 and 15 years of age, you know, talk to my agent.
It seems like a shady world. It seems shady.
I would never cast aspersions on anybody else's career choices. Everybody's entitled to make a living, and you know, it's reasonably well regulated. You know, but it's football, and you know, it happens from tiny tots up to seniors. You know, the chat in the car park. You know, would little Johnny not move over to Club XY, whatever, or on a bigger scale, you know, we'll get Gary away to Club XYZ in whatever. So, you know, people make promises, and you know, people get their heads turned, and that's understandable.
You can, I was just going to say, you can completely understand it. If someone can offer you to change your life, you're kind of going, well. It's been great, Tony. It's been emotional, but I'm out of here.
Fundamentally, you know, our sport is still fundamentally, you know, a working class sport. You know, it's you know, it's not a way out, but it's a way forward.
Yes,
it's a huge opportunity. You know, it was interesting. We hosted an American colleges team recently. This is kind of a long running annual event out in Bray.
Okay,
and these are college students, you know. But they play.
They're on scholarship, are they?
Yeah.
Okay, so they're
play
decent
a good level of
level.
football.
Yeah.
You know, but you know, couldn't get over how little we charge. Let's say our academy kids. You know, so our academy kids, like every club, you know, you pay an annual fee, and for that you get your kit, and you get this, that, and the other, and so on. And you know, I don't know. Say our fee is whatever. Say it's €500 or something. You know. What you'd pay in the States, you know, is a 10x, like is a large multiple of that, you know, and they just couldn't believe what kids here were getting for their €500, you know. But I think, you know, the demographic. So you look at football in the States, and it's a really exciting place to go, and you know, to see what's happening there now. But
and they're catching up, because I remember football in the States was a joke. I remember people laughed at Beckham.
Yeah.
What a dope, he's going over there. That was one of the smartest business decisions ever made by a footballer.
Yeah. But it's probably got a different demographic.
Yeah.
I would say, you know. So, you know, the prospect of a family here paying, you know, thousands, you know, for Johnny to play in the academy, it's just not a runner.
Yeah.
You know, it's just not a runner. So we're not quite comparing like with like, but the US is interesting. There are certainly folks in the US looking at Irish football, you know, as a step into the UK or Europe. I think we're going to see a lot more outreach from clubs here to there, and vice versa.
Do you think that multi-club model is going to become more popular? You're seeing this quite across the board, where owners or funds are getting together and they're going to go, right, we're going to have a Belgian team, a Spanish team, an Irish team, and a UK team. Yeah.
I mean, it looks like it is. So, you know, and there were a couple of conversations, I think they were well publicised here recently, about, you know, a Premier League club or two in discussions with a League of Ireland club or two, about becoming, you know, part of the family, so to speak. So I can see more of that, you know. I can see more of that happening for sure. You know, you look at clubs like, you know, I mean, Brentford, for example. You know, they've got a really progressive philosophy and strategy. One of our lads went to kind of Brentford pre-Christmas there, and that's an impressive club.
Brentford, you know, and Brighton are two clubs I look at and go, they just have a system and an ethos. And what I like about them is that even if someone leaves, we talked about this over lunch, you know, the whole club doesn't fall apart. You know, they've structures and philosophies.
There's a philosophy,
principles and philosophies. It's like business, right? You know, principles and philosophies, this is how we work.
And there's an approach, and there's also an acknowledgement that developing talent and then the talent moving on is just part of the natural
life cycle. Yep.
You know,
but everyone's aware it's up front. It's not kind of like, ooh, don't talk about it. Yeah. It's all up front.
Yeah, and that has to be part of our plan out in Bray, is that, you know, we will develop talent, we will, you know, retain them for the benefit of our own performances for as long as we can. But ultimately, you know, everybody should fulfill their full potential, and if that means going to Europe or the UK, then we need to facilitate that, and you know, and then reinvest back in the club. So
it's the flywheel effect, right?
Yeah,
just the flywheel effect of.
But you would hear people over the years, we're a selling club, or this or that. You know, I mean, you know, Brighton and Brentford, you know, certainly don't fit that mold. Sure, they sell players, but I think they're actually kind of highly regarded for their whole
incredibly
approach. Yeah,
but they're finding players for 2 million. They're selling them on for 50.
Yeah. So an alignment, I mean, whether it's co-ownership or an alignment or a partnership of some sort with a club like that, I could see how that would be mutually beneficial. You know, so, you know, we have a place, you know, to send talent where we're happy that they'll be properly assessed and well looked after and cared for and so on.
Is that something you're exploring?
The club. Well, yeah. So kind of our head of football would have a lot of contacts, and so we have been on the road a little bit, and we're getting on the road again and going and meeting some clubs and trying to just develop, you know, kind of preferential relationships, if you want to call it that, you know, and so, but kind of philosophy and approach and all that is an important part of that, you know. As you say, Brighton and Brentford seem to do it, you know, particularly well.
It's core. It's what you stand for. Any good business has this is who we are. Yeah. This is our philosophy. We do not accept this because we are only doing that. Yeah. And it comes back to what you're saying about the academy and stuff there. If there's options here, if someone's going to be here till 18, well, I want to go to Bray because they have an academy and they have systems and they have structures and I can see the route. Yeah. If I go to Bray, okay, I'm going to have an incredible academy. I'm going to train like a professional. Like, that's the dream for any young girl or boy who wants to be a professional athlete. The dream is to, when you're 14, 15, be treated like pro athlete, get all the access. I remember I played down in Limerick with UL. Yeah. Sure, it was as rudimentary as anything. Yeah, there was no diet. There was no recovery. The recovery was a few pints. Like, when I think of it now, I'm kind of going, Jesus, what were we doing? You had the lads who are naturally talented go out there and score 5 goals, or the workers like me who'd be like trying to stay fit, the knowledge, I don't think that could be overlooked. The knowledge between now and then is huge. And it goes back to a broader point about what you say there. If I go to my local gym in Greystones or wherever, all the younger generation are in incredible shape. Like, so there's been a massive shift.
It gets a little obsessive sometimes, but it's I'd rather see them obsessing about that than other things.
Well, you think of
some of the things. So
10 years ago, well, there's still a booze culture in Ireland, but you think about 10 years ago, the booze culture was predominant. That was all you did as a young lad. Out Friday, Saturday, Sunday, pints, great lad, you're a great lad. You know, whereas now, no, sure, I've got training. I'm training on Friday and I've got a match on Saturday. Then on Sunday, I'm going hiking. They've kind of seen the light and their nutrition is bang on. And they're, my own kids, it's phenomenal. It's so good. But it only makes sense in that would bleed into the elite levels. You see with rugby, I think it's a perfect example. One of the best teams in the world, if not the best team in the world. It goes back to the systems, though. They all have academies. And they've been doing this for years.
So, I mean, the academy thing is interesting. You know, everybody talks about, you know, having a best-in-class academy. I'd say it's a work in progress for most clubs. And then you have, you know, then you kind of reach the ceiling in the academy, which is under 19s. And, you know, either you make the step up to first team, and not everybody can, or, you know, sometimes, you know, guys fall away, you know. So we're kind of keen to we've got a great pathway partner relationship with Cabin Teely, and, you know, there's scope there. There's a nicely developing Leinster Senior League side there that, you know, if someone, you know, is 19, is not quite ready yet for the step up, you know, they can still play high level football. And, you know, I mean, kids develop at different stages. You know,
Just going to say that you do see some players.
You know,
Okay,
late bloomers.
Yeah, you've prodigies that come through
everywhere.
16, 17. You're kind of going, oh my God, Jude Bellingham, perfect example.
Yeah.
Gifted from 16, playing in the Birmingham first team at 16.
Yeah.
Then you've players that come through in their 20, and you're kind of going, my God.
Yeah.
Between 20 and 21, he just transformed.
Yeah.
He's now an absolute baller.
Yeah. But it's a competitive aspect of the business. So, you know, every League of Ireland club has an academy, and you know, it's quite a scrap to attract and keep and retain the best talent. You know, so
how do you get them? What's the plan? How are you going to get them?
Everybody's got their pitch. You know, everybody's got their, you know, here's what we can do for you.
And what is that?
Well, I mean, I'd say that unfortunately there's no kind of simple answer to that. So, I mean, I haven't visited every academy in the country, so I won't pretend to know everything about them all. But most have a way to go in terms of standards, in terms of facilities, in terms of strength and conditioning, in terms of rehab, in terms of all that kind of stuff, you know. And obviously, the further up the tree you go in terms of, you know, the kind of Premier League teams that may have been successful in recent years, you know, you'd expect to see probably better facilities and standards there.
Is that money getting invested, though?
Well...
Or is there money there to invest?
Yeah. Well, I would say finding investment money in the football world is still is challenging. So there's not, and I spend a bit of time looking at this on an ongoing basis, there's not kind of a well-defined community of prospective investors into football. Certainly not in Ireland. There are interested individuals who I think, you know, can see this as an opportunity. So you really have to go looking for investment funds. You know, I mean, I've got involved. I cover, you know, if there's an operational deficit at all in the club, you know, I'm happy to cover that, you know, on a kind of a day-to-day basis. But in terms of capital projects, you know, ideally what you want to see is some kind of co-investment or co-funding in order to do those types of things, you know. And academy facilities is a good example.
I was going to say, what do you mean by capital investments? Yeah. What does that look like?
So, you know, I mean, typically it should include some all-weather facilities, given the country we live in and what the winter's like. So
I remember cleaning cow shit off the field every Sunday.
Yeah,
you go play away, and there'd be shovels. There'd be if you were lucky, there was a container that would have the shovels. And the balls.
There.
If you're lucky, the home team changed in there. You didn't change in there, and they'd be cleaning the cow shit off, and just like it just makes sense that if you've all weather, you play more, you get better.
Yeah. But I mean, some of it's basic stuff, but it's important stuff, and it's kind of kit,
fundamentals,
equipment.
Yeah.
How do I look as an academy player?
Yeah.
How does everybody else look?
But if you're a young lad and you get an academy top, that's huge.
Standard of coaching, that's a big thing. You know, some clubs pay their underage coaches, some clubs don't. You know, that probably needs to move to some kind of consistent.
I think so. You get what you pay for.
Yeah.
You really like it's.
Well, I mean, thankfully, the world of football is still populated with lots of people who are happy to volunteer.
There is, but I think it gets to a stage where you want a professional level outfit. You have to have professional level people who are going. It's their be all and end all.
Yeah.
You know, they're not rushing from work on a Friday going, "Jeez, I gotta get the balls, I gotta get the bibs, I gotta wash." You know, that's great up to a certain level, but I think it gets beyond that if they really want to progress.
Yeah, but that's a challenge also. So, you know, how do you move from a model that is largely volunteer driven to a model that is, you know, that has staff, you know, who have job specs and who are accountable, and, you know, there'll be certain deliverables and so that all needs investment, you know. So you know, I mean, I mentioned earlier you can kind of see what needs to be done and over what time frame. But you know, some of it you can do yourself, and then other aspects of it, for example, you know, academy facilities development and all that. You know, there's, I mean, it's interesting. I talk to people about the football club. You know, anybody who likes their football is really interested in it, in the story, you know. And, and some kind of say, oh, well, wouldn't mind getting involved,
Okay, Friday.
You know, so
See you there.
so,
Yeah. Get involved then.
and getting involved could mean anything. It could mean helping as a steward or working in the shop, or it could mean wanting to invest in the club.
Yeah.
And but it's also interesting when you talk to different people about it. People are sometimes interested in different pieces of it. So if I'm out looking for co-investment for the club to do project X, Y, Z, when you break it out into its different parts, you'll find that there are sometimes different audiences interested. Now, sometimes you get people who are interested in the whole thing, but by and large, take for example the academy. There are guys who kind of look at the academy and what that model is, and they can simply enough see a business opportunity there.
Talent business,
Some of it's talent management, so you've got 80 players in the academy, we managed to get 1 or 2 away, per annum over the next 4 or 5, 6 years or whatever. You build a roster, you build a stable, and the metrics and the money involved in that is actually fairly clearly understood. So you can look at an academy which doesn't have a huge burn rate, it's not a huge cost, put money in, you can largely be happy that you're not going to lose your money, and there's the potential of some upside. And some of these guys, like, you remember when you were a kid, you'd have football cards, and you'd look at, I've got, Peter Osgood or whatever I've got. And so this is, we've got 10 or 12 kids away, one's playing for Brighton, one's playing for so-and-so. There's an added interest.
Story. There's a story, and stories are everything.
Yeah, and then there's the potential of some upside there. So some guys get that and kind of say, yeah, wouldn't mind getting involved with that. Others, there's a real estate piece to every club story, and real estate ranges from the stadium to all-weather facilities. We pay currently, a small fortune to use third-party all-weather facilities for training and so on and so on. And we're in the process of organising our own at this stage. But there is kind of, an asset-based project. Yeah.
A revenue generator as well. Yeah, it's not just
and
ticket sales on a Friday.
Some grants for it, and you get this, that, and the other. We have a big project, which would be a stadium redevelopment, and we're progressing along the early stages of that.
What would you like to see there? What would you like to see the stadium in Bray look like?
I think the catchment and the town and so on is deserving of a kind of a 5,000-6,000 seater stadium. We went over to visit Macclesfield recently.
Okay.
Which is really interesting. I don't know. Did you see the documentary at all? Robbie Savage.
No.
The two Robbies.
Really?
Yeah. Now I think it's on BBC Player, which can be difficult to get here. But they
use a VPN. It'd be grand.
They rescued Macclesfield out of either administration or liquidation. I can't remember.
Yeah.
And, so it's kind of it's starting from zero and building it up.
That sounds right up my alley. I got my wife to watch Welcome to Wrexham.
Did you? Yeah. So kind of a similar kind of story, and but if you look at their catchment and their location and so on, they basically the two boys have built the club up from scratch pretty much, or at least reinvigorated it. Have enhanced the stadium, put in hospitality, put in a fan zone, put in it's really impressive.
They get it, the medium side. You see the United guys with Salford as well.
Yeah,
they get it. Yeah, they understand the big play. I think there's similarities between you and them in terms of they see the big picture here. Yeah, they're like, this is an asset. We're going to invest in Salford and use our profiles to leverage it up. And
they started about 5-6 years ago, so they're a good bit ahead of us, I suppose. But in terms of just a picture, like the whole match evening experience was really exceptional.
Yeah?
Yeah. Proper hospitality. You can get a nice meal. You can get a beer. You can watch the game. There's a fan zone. There's music after the game.
That's cool.
There's
It's an event.
There's a gym, there's strength and conditioning rooms. There's, it had it. So it was interesting just to see.
Cool.
Yeah,
those trips must be fascinating. That must be so much fun.
I have to say it exceeded all my expectations. And we have our own ideas about what we could do out in Bray, and it was interesting just to see. Oh gosh, here's.
You need the template.
And Rob ran through the numbers with us and gave us insight into the kind of the commercial side of it and how they've got from here to here and what aspects of the commercial model work and which ones don't and so on. So
that's so key, isn't it?
Yeah,
and people are willing to be open and share with you. That's interesting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. And so that's a big project. That project will have its own set of financial dynamics, I suppose. We're currently funding kind of a feasibility part of it. So every stadium redevelopment needs a feasibility study,
right,
which includes kind of an economic assessment, transport, engineering, a whole lot of reports.
Oh God.
And but it's a long-term thing.
Right.
We have a stadium, we have somewhere to play, and we'll get the feasibility done, and then we'll just decide if we want to do it in steps or if we want to, But again, it'll need a funding partner. We get a lot of it grant aided, I'll go out looking for that. So there's kind of different buckets, If we're looking to fund different activities, as I say, different folks are kind of interested. So I'm looking after more that side of things.
Yeah.
And GM runs the operations, and head of football, runs the football side. So we've got a good crew, good team, and the challenges are kind of clearly laid out ahead of us. Yeah.
What would you, if we were looking forward to kind of like 5 years' time now, we're sitting back doing part 2 or 3 of this pod, what would you like to have seen happen?
So
you seem like a very strategic guy. I know you kind of thought about this.
The academy is probably top of my list. So I know a lot of Friday night fans. They want to come along. A lot of them are just interested in the first team, and they're interested in being promoted and what that might mean. And I fully understand all of that. So I struggle to see how that alone is going to make, for a kind of a viable, sustainable business model. I'd love it. I'd love the excitement of it all. But unless we get the academy piece right, then the rest is it's kind of it's difficult to see that.
You see that in the UK a lot, yo-yo clubs.
Yeah,
they go up from the Championship, not good enough for the Premier League to bounce down. They're too good for the Championship to go straight back up. Not good enough to go straight back down.
But there's no right or wrong answer to that. So
it's sport. You cannot predict anything.
The emotion of winning the playoff or being promoted from the Championship, but the emotion of that is worth its weight in gold. Yeah, the depression of coming back down again, that's just a reality for some clubs.
That's sport, isn't it? And you just can't predict it. That's why I'm obsessed with sports of all levels.
So we've had a good start to this year. We've a new head coach in. We've got a significantly different squad. A lot of new faces in, and we're only 4 or 5 games in now, but we're unbeaten so far, and I mean,
the dream is alive.
Well, that side of the story does matter.
Yeah, you have to. Yeah, look, success makes everything better.
Yeah, and it creates a lot of positivity about the place. And so for me, what I'd like to see, in the next couple of years is that we can maintain that positivity, but make real progress, real concrete progress on the academy and the academy infrastructure side of things. And because longer term, that's what's going to be the bread and butter.
Well, you bring the business expertise. You're able to juggle both. You're not just a romantic who's like, I just want to see Bray back in the Premier Division, which is grand and all, but for a 10, 20 or 30 year project, which you're thinking of this is, and a big, as you see football getting more popular globally, if Ireland gets even 30% of that bump.
Well, we should mention the girls and women's side of things.
Yes, exactly.
It's we have a great partner out in Greystones, Greystones United. So they've
great facilities.
We've coupled with them, and they manage our. So we don't have a senior women's team just yet. We have underage girls and women's football, and so they manage that. But ideally, what we want is to try and bring them into the fold more.
It makes sense. They're just a few miles down the road again.
Yeah, like we've got a great asset in the ground there. There's a game every second Friday night. Outside of that, the place is largely underutilized. So we're working on some ideas to try and get more community contact, get more usage of the ground, get more footfall, just get it to be a more vibrant place other than every second Friday night.
It does make sense. If you have an asset and you're using it once every fortnight for 5 hours, what other business in the world would you do that with? If you just put our business hats on here, you'd be like, what are we doing?
Yeah, so we're looking at a few different things to try and address that. I mean, we are, we're in there as a tenant, I suppose, and our arrangement is sporting related only. So some of our ideas, fit into the sporting bracket, and but the local council have been very supportive of us. So if we want to run some concerts or those types of revenue generating things there, I think we'll get.
Makes sense.
Get the support we need.
It just makes sense to, and the money is going to bring into Bray as well.
Yeah.
The knock-on effect of that is huge. If there was concerts in Bray, it's kind of a no-brainer to go have it there and to bring. If you're bringing 2,000 or 3,000 people into a town.
Yeah.
The knock-on effect there is colossal from the bars, restaurants, cafes, ancillary services. Huge.
Yeah. So it's they're the challenges.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
You're a local.
I'm going to come along tomorrow night.
Yeah.
Home game tomorrow night, so I'm going to come along. Yeah. Where can people learn more? So we talked about getting involved, right? Number one, if people want to get involved and go, do you know what? This is a big mission. I want to get involved. Number one, there. Number two, where can they just learn more about Bray or buy merchandise or do whatever?
So we have pretty good active social media, Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. Good number of users and followers there. It's probably the best source for kind of up to the minute information in terms of what's happening. Website is in the process of a revamp, is a bit jaded and a little bit out of date and needs improving. We may actually split it between academy and first team. So that's a work in progress. But there is a website and there's useful information on that. We have a small enough leadership team. Myself, Gary Loons is the general manager, Pat Devlin's the head of football. If someone wants to get involved in the club in any shape or form, myself, Gary and Pat are available, approachable, and happy to have a chat.
What's the best way to reach anyone in the club? Just go to the website and drop you a mail?
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect.
Yeah, that'd be the best, I'd say. Yeah.
Brilliant. Listen,
it's
exciting.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us. That is
keep an eye on it.
A fantastic chat. Really, really enjoyed it. Thank you so much, Tony.
No trouble. Yeah.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Wherever you're listening, whether it's Spotify, YouTube, or Apple, click that subscribe button, and I will see you back here next week for a brand new podcast.